Okay, hello, it's the Cyber Dudes podcast. We are on episode 2 today. My name is Robin Thornton. I am your host.
And my name is Omar Sangarima, and it's Los Cyber Dudes for our friends of the Spanish-speaking variety. Welcome.
I did wonder when we came up with that name. We are completely aware that that's probably not a particularly good name, but kind of we were short on ideas, and we decided, you know what, it's kind of so crap that it's good. We're going to run with it.
It's like suspenders, right? It seemed a good idea at the time, but when you use them, might not be as sexy as you thought.
Did it really suspend anything as well?
I don't know. That's hurting me here.
We're going off topic. Yeah, the other thing as well is that I went away with the wife this last weekend. So we're recording President's Day. This will come out a few days later. And but as we're going out there, we went upstate. We went to do a bit of skiing. That place we're staying was kind of this log cabin way out in the middle of nowhere. I had absolutely no idea how far away from kind of the nearest dwelling this place was. So it was a little bit creepy. Beautiful clear skies, you can see every single star at night.
Sure.
But it was slightly creepy. But as we are going up to this place, I can't remember, but my wife loves listening to true crime, as I think all women of the millennial era do. It's kind of it's weird.
Sure.
It's weird how they're all very into this. Also makes me slightly worried. It's kind of like, you've listened to all the ways that people have made mistakes when committing murder, so you know all the things not to do. You might get away with it.
My natural question as a follow-up there, Robin, would be who suggested the locale? Right, because if she's listening to the true crime and she goes, "Okay, good," well,
no, I found the place. The main criteria. Well, it was we were somewhat stymied by some criteria because she said, "Oh, it's got to have a hot tub."
Smart choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're there's one particular podcast, true crime podcast she's listening to, and I'm thinking, I really don't like this guy's delivery. It's an Australian dude, and his intonation is just very, very odd. So she goes, "Oh, okay, we'll go and put on a different one. It's called Morbid, and it was started in like 2019 by these 3 girls who, I swear to God, I'm pretty sure they are very open about just the basic white girlness of them doing this.
Okay.
Once you get into the inside jokes from them all, there is quite funny. But it was one of their early episodes where also all of the audio was really not that great, and it made me feel better about us doing this, because actually I completely just realised now as well, my audio's not going to be brilliant on this because I don't have the headset thing going on, so I've got the echo from my room here. But it made me so kind of relieved about and by all accounts, this podcast is, and within 10 episodes as well, they've markedly improved it. They had markedly improved everything, but it made me feel so much better about the quality of us doing this and the way that we're doing it. And actually, we see things as we look back on the recording and when it gets posted on YouTube, and Spotify and whatnot, and we do the, how can we incrementally make this better? How can we sharpen up the audio? How can we sharpen up the video, etc.? Sharpen up the delivery and all that. But the other side to this as well. So this particular episode that we were listening to was about the Dyatlov Pass in Siberia, where it was an incident where like 9 post-grad students who were all very, very experienced hikers just like died in extremely strange circumstances. Which the prevailing theories are either Soviet, back in the 50s, 59 or something like that. The prevailing theories were either Soviet weapons testing, and they were got rid of because they'd stumbled upon something that they shouldn't have, and it was made to kind of look like some sort of weird Yeti attack or something like that. Or the other one was there was an avalanche, which would account for the fact that many of these people suffered injuries not dissimilar to having been in a car crash. So like massive internal trauma, but not that much soft tissue damage. Very strange. But anyway, so we're getting close to this place, and we're properly out in the sticks on the back roads and stuff. And I say, you do realize kind of like where we are. And I said to her, like, we're out in the wilderness, and you have us listening to this. And she goes, yeah, that's a really good point. I'm just going to turn it off now because
I mean,
it's a later date. There's news for there's the cyber news that we've got, but there's also news for you baby daddy.
oh yes, goodness gracious. So yeah, that was she's a week old today. Good old Aurora Jane. Very excited. Yeah, thank you. It's
Beautiful.
so it's a wild time. Life comes at you fast. As we were discussing pre-launch, right? A time to seek a balance and try to really check back in to the things that matter. So we'll see how good I get with that. I'll stumble a few times, as you probably well know, but I'll give it a go. But yes, mom and a baby are doing well, and we're we're having family over. Everybody's visiting. It's a nice heartwarming time. So thanks for the shout out.
Marvelous stuff. Gets great new folks to the clan.
Exactly.
Okay, right. Let's get into the news then. So there's three things I've had dropped into my inbox this morning, actually. So first things first, we have Russian-aligned hackers target European and Iranian embassies in new espionage campaign. I find this a weird one because I think the Russians and the Iranians are supposed to be quite cozy at the moment. Yeah,
that's what I thought, and
Iranian drones in Ukraine, but now they're going hitting.
I'm not quite 100%. Like there's that Houthi business, right? That's going on, and I think it's an add-on, right? Unfortunately, to the Israel Palestine conflict there. So it's just, but that one was a head scratcher for me as well, because as I took a look at, right, Russia switched over to being a big trade partner with China, more so, right? Like because of the sanctions that may or may not have worked. I don't want to get into that. I'm not a poli-sci person, but sanctions happened. They said, okay, hold my vodka, I guess, hold my beer, we're just going to go trade with China. And I think that there was a lot of technological sharing between Russia and Iran. But I not quite. So is that presaging maybe Iran, or maybe trying to drive a wedge, right? That between the U.S. and Iran at all? Like there's so many different permutations, but it almost seems as though I don't know, they're just getting reps in, right? Cyber wise, they're just testing stuff out. I couldn't get a beat on this either.
I always find it very puzzling, especially a lot of the way. I mean, there's the obvious stuff where Russia and the US don't particularly like each other, especially recently. I think it's always not too bad in the late 90s and early 2000s, but then we got into the mid 2010s and everything started kicking off again.
Yeah.
And this is here's a cyber thing as well. The mid 2010s it started kicking off primarily because of the Crimean annexation as well, and that really started off a lot of Russia's cyber activities within Ukraine. Right, this Ukraine war invasion was foreshadowed for a long time before it actually happened. So, I mean, and especially, okay, you can go back as far as 2014 and think, okay, that's pretty obvious when it's, all right, we're going to take the Crimean Peninsula from you. But then from the cyber perspective, there's the NotPetya attack in 2017. I mean, it's basically been a cyber shooting range for God knows how long. You're looking something up in it. What are we getting?
Oh wait, the invasion of Georgia, right? That was, I think, the training wheels of
the Setia thing as well.
That was exactly, and it was the kickoff, really, or at least the first testing of the hybrid warfare. Right? They went in, shut the lights off from a cyber perspective, and then they roll tanks through. Yeah, so
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and that I think was like the testing ground there, right? For what is it, the the Gersov doctrine, or I'm going to butcher that, but it was a Russian general, right,
Yeah.
who straight up goes, listen, this is now a new theater of war, right? Like almost when air attacks were really, you know, brought to the forefront, World War I, World War II. I think
Yeah.
same thing for the cyber theater of
Yeah.
folding it into, right?
Yeah, we've moved from the trenches and the artillery, and now we're going
Yeah.
naval and air, and
Yeah.
really the guys on the ground are just there to secure the territory.
100%. And now, right, you add the cyber component to the mix where you can absolutely disrupt a whole host of supporting activities, not to mention the straight up kinetic ones, right? Like you can starve an army, you can put an army in darkness, you can shut the heat off, right, for a complete country during a terrible winter. You know, you can mess with, sadly, hospitals, right, in terms of trying to get folks well after issues there. So I think they POC'd, right, proof of concepted the whole idea when they invaded Georgia, and then I think they brought as much as they could to bear on successive campaigns in the region, of course, including the business with Ukraine.
What I did find amusing though about the theories about where the conflict's going to go and how soon it's going to end, and I've just nudged my desk at my camera. The theories about where it's going to go, when it's going to end, etc. Part of it comes down to who runs out of munitions first, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's been well documented, but it's been speculated that the Russians have been for a while running out of shells, and they've been going to the North Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another cyber angle here, because North Koreans need the money and they commit ransomware for that. But it's been going to the North Koreans to buy shells, and the North Koreans have been acquiescing to this request. And people see that as this conflict's just going to keep going on and on and on from that sort of perspective, or the Russians aren't going to stop. It's like, hang on a minute. They're buying back 30, 40-year-old surplus that they sold to the North Koreans ages ago in the first place. It's not going well when you're buying back the crap stock that you sold off.
Yeah, it's like going to Goodwill and saying, I need clothes, right? I need those clothes back, and then paying a premium to get them back, and also you're stuck wearing, 40-year-old clothes, right? Which I guess, in the clothing age, vintage, right? But not necessarily with munitions, right? It's not something that you want to be that far on the back foot from. It's, there's implications of reaching out, to the African subcontinent, right? And trying to garner support there. There's the Chinese angle as well, which is, potentially a good segue into the later portion of the show as well. It's just, I don't think there's any way of getting away from this, really.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to, so let's move on to that and get to that quickly. So the Russia-reliant hackers targeting European and Iranian embassies piece, just to round that out. So cross-site scripting vulnerability, it's an attack that we'll talk about in later episodes. We can go into some depth here, but it's a hacking group that has been named, very catchy name, Tag 70. Who names these people? Russian-linked hacking group Tag 70 exploited a well-known vulnerability in something called Roundcube webmail servers. The latest campaign aims to collect intelligence on European political and military activities, which makes an awful lot of sense, but then they're also going after the Iranian embassies, which, as I said before, I don't think that makes an awful lot of sense. Winter Vivern, the group behind the attacks, demonstrates advanced techniques and tools indicating a well-funded and skilled threat actor, which, not surprising. I mean, if you stay backed, then yeah, you are going to be well-funded. It tends to be part of the core. Next story: hackers are targeting Asian bank accounts using stolen facial recognition data. This is kind of a thing that people have been, I think, rightly worried about here. Suspected Chinese hackers are stealing facial recog data and using it to access bank accounts in Southeast Asia, researchers have found. The sophisticated campaign is being carried out by a group dubbed Gold Factory by researchers within the cybersecurity firm Group IB. I mean, this is an obvious problem because, you know, what's supposed to be good security ends up being not so good security, and you get your money stolen.
There's been recent reports of malware targeting iOS, right? Which is kind of throwing a bit of people or people for a bit of a loop, right? With the there's still that holdover of Apple can't be exactly all that, which we know is bollocks in your parlance, right? It's complete nonsense. but it goes along with it's been harvesting facial recognition data, right? So to your point, it's one of those that's usually, at least in normal kind of discussions, facial recognition is one of those Loctite absolute best ways for authentication authorization, but not when you have access to data that you can repurpose for nefarious ends, right? Or play with when it comes to that. So that's a little disheartening. I'm not 100% sure how this could be a deep dive that we go into down the road, right? How one combats that, but it's scary.
Yeah, I mean, well, off the top of my head, there's a lot of responsibility on the financial institutions, but I think as the end user, as the customer, as the person holding the account and with, well, you don't have custody of the money, the bank does, but with the one with the vested interest in keeping the money safe, it's keep an eye on your financials, right? Make sure that you are checking your credit report on a regular-ish basis, because that's one of the first places that sort of fraud's gonna throw up. So yeah, there's no point in fretting about what do I do about somebody stealing my face and using it to break into my bank account. There's nothing you can do about that. What you can do is be proactive about monitoring and preventing, and jumping straight on the moment that anything fishy looks afoot, which is not a total segue because we have another thing to talk about first. But phishing, we will be talking about that in a few moments. Yeah, that was the second of two cutouts of Omar's internet, so we'll get right back into it. So, Pennsylvania county pays $350,000 cyber attack ransom. I hate this because this is just taxpayers' money down the tubes, and it's just so easily avoidable by local administrators who presumably just need to make a good case for getting the budget. I mean, the feds are not going to say no to you when you're in a position of we need to secure our stuff because it's sorely at risk of being hacked, because the current administration is so hot on cybersecurity. They'll just say yes, have the money. At least that's my understanding of things.
Listen, Pennsylvania is a very important state in elections. So anytime that I see some sort of municipality, right? In general, when I see this, it makes me sad. Makes me very pissed when folks pay. That's a whole other can of corn there. But also, this is not a good portent for a safe and free election cyber-wise, which is something that I used to in my youth take for granted, right? But not anymore. So
yeah, the irony with this one as well is that because the position of government, most Western governments, is we don't negotiate with terrorists. This is essentially terrorism to a certain degree. The local government in Washington County, Pennsylvania, chose to negotiate with foreign cybercriminals after an unprecedented ransomware attack paralyzed its operations. This is troublesome, as acquiescing to hacker demands could encourage further malicious activities. The 2023 data says that the refusal to pay the ransom has gone up, right? So that's people saying, no, we're not going to pay it, we're just going to try and recover our own stuff. At the same time, I think, if I recall correctly, attacks have gone up as well, so maybe you're in a position of just like, well, the attacks have gone up, so the refusal to pay has just sort of followed it proportionally. But the other side is, it was either 2022 or 2023, the figures of ransoms paid topped $1 billion. So the problem here being essentially there's a what one can infer from that is potentially the ransoms that are getting paid are going up. They're higher in value. Which, I mean, again, it's a problem. The biggest issue with ransomware is that the more people pay, the more it's going to happen. It's this vicious cycle, negative feedback loop of the more you do it, the more it happens. It's like the more you respond to, as a kid, when somebody gives you a nickname you don't want, the moment you start responding to it, it sticks. And then the more you respond to it, the more it sticks, and more and more and more. And I don't say that for, I say that through experience.
I mean, depending on what side, I was absolutely on the receiving end.
Oh yeah, I wasn't admitting to being an absolute shit to other people and just like giving them that they want. No, I was definitely on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, no, I same here, and I think the point is absolutely valid, right? This is, it's going to segue into our topic of phishing, right? Why is it still done? Because it's profitable, right? Because it's still exactly
well, Andy
it
says,
works. Yeah.
Why is social engineering so effective? Well, like, why is social engineering so prevalent? Because it works.
It works. 100% spot on. So if you pay, you're only incentivizing, perversely, of course, bad actors to continue to try to abuse networks in such a fashion, right?
For sure. Mm-hmm. And then, here's the other thing as well. And actually, it's a bit of a. It probably doesn't necessarily work well in ransomware. Something that's been happening a lot recently is that the ransom demands, especially against small to medium businesses, have been going down. They want to keep it so affordable that people don't not pay. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the more expensive that you make your ransomware, actually the more reasonable by comparison paying for the things that stop the ransomware happening in the first place, paying for the preventative measures actually works. So, if they set their price point too high, then they kind of do themselves out of a scam, because everybody just goes, oh, well, it's just cheap to actually buy the security stuff or the expertise to do it. On the flip side as well, making it so low that it's not profitable isn't gonna work for them. So there's going to be a sweet spot in there. And the other side of that comes into making it sufficiently. I've said this already, but making it sufficiently priced such that small to medium business owners say, I cannot afford not to pay it because my data is worth so much more. You said this in episode 1. There were a couple of good ransomware attacks and really back in the curtains for you.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of the old school protection rackets, right? If you're a small time mobster or even medium to large size mobster, I'm not really up and up on the etiquette.
The size of mobsters.
Exactly, right? They're all scary. But if you're running a protection racket, you can't quite make it so that you put people out of business with the tax that you're essentially putting on the folks that you protect. But you still, you have to make both sticks, right? Equally as scary. And I think that's where we're at now. Sadly, to your point earlier about like a federal response or just this current administration, there just needs to be a straight up stance. Right, and then there needs to be recourse, and I think potentially, I don't know if our if increased regulation is the way to go, right? Like there's arguments on both sides, but there has to be something of a coordinated kind of stance and response and help, I think, out there for small to medium businesses.
I think, honestly, and it's part of the reason that we do this. I think the biggest or the most effective solution in the long run is education and resources.
Sure.
Help. There's an entire, I can't forget, I think it's the small medium business administration that have cyber resources for. We'll look that up afterwards. Maybe put a link in.
Sure.
Like that. But there's an entire organisation dedicated to this. We are an organisation dedicated to this. The more people know about the threats that are out there and what they can do from a preventative standpoint to make sure that they don't fall foul of something like ransomware or other cyber attack, the better, really. So we're going to move on. We're going to go straight into phishing because it is a good little segue, and then you want to talk a little bit about Vault Typhoon after that. So phishing. Oh, what is it?
It's sending a weird message that's not so weird, right? That entices a target to act in a way that's counter to their best interest, whether it's clicking on something, whether it's downloading something, whether it's even responding in kind to make the attacker know that this is a live account. There's all sorts of angles, but that's essentially what you want to have happen, at least at the brass tacks.
Yeah, malicious electronic communication, normally electronic, malicious electronic communication designed to get somebody to do something that is against their best interests. The most common form of this is via email. I guarantee absolutely everybody has received a phishing email at some point in their lives.
And if you think you haven't, you have. Just end of story. Just at the end. If you think you haven't, you absolutely have. You just didn't realize it. Please trust us. There's very few times I think either one of us is going to be as absolutist as this. But everyone, if you have any sort of presence on the internet at some point in your life, you've received a phishing message.
There are undoubtedly, there will be people who have not necessarily received one yet. They're normally the people who have only just created an email.
I mean, my daughter maybe, but that's about it. She's a week old.
Yeah.
Like, give her 2 weeks, and I'm positive somebody is going to send a coupon for Similac.
Find a way.
It's a coupon for baby formula, and it's going to be, click on this, and you'll get 3 free bottles, and it'll be some sort of malicious attack.
Received by proxy. Like, she's actually just getting it through your email.
100%. Vault Typhoon. Heard I was talking shit. And they're sending me coupons in the mail.
Oh, God. State-sponsored Chinese hacking groups just sending you coupons.
Why not?
So realistically, and this is a good point, the chances of receiving phishing email into your inbox or to your phone number, or so because here's the other thing as well. So phishing by email, very, very common. Most people know about it. Also happens via text. Also happens, and that's smishing, SMS phishing, and also happens via phone call, which most people would just consider as being nuisance phone calls. That's phishing. The latter two are intensely annoying because the FCC should be able to do something about this, but they are the most toothless crocodile I think I've ever known in government. They recently did this where they said AI-based. They passed legislation. They used some 1994 legislation against automated robo telemarketing calls, which everybody still receives anyway. So you can tell how effective that's been in 30 years.
You're not right.
And this is why I have no faith in what they've just done by making AI-powered robocalls illegal. Like, who cares? You never catch these people doing it anyway because I'm still getting 5 a day.
Oh, God, yeah.
So,
100%. It's not. Yeah.
Anyway, so phishing, smishing, phishing, frankly, the best thing that you can really do with the smishing and the phishing is if you've got an option on your phone, on your smartphone, either swipe one way or the other. I think it's swipe to the left on an iPhone, and you can report it to your service provider. What they're going to do with it, I don't know, but it's better than doing absolutely nothing. The phishing piece, the email phishing, much more within your power to prevent yourself from receiving these kinds of things. But also the key bit is, and this, to be honest, this goes for the smishing and the phishing piece as well. Arm yourself with the knowledge of how to spot it and how to ignore it, and if necessary, how to report it to the proper authorities. The worst scam is the one that you don't fall for, in effect. The most ineffective scam is the one that you don't fall for.
That threw me off for a loop there. I was
yeah, the worst.
It's like the worst one is
the most ineffective scam is the one you don't fall for.
True.
So, phishing emails. I mean, how are we spotting them? I mean, I'll go from when it lands in your inbox. What are you looking for?
First things first, I want to know if I was expecting it. Right? Like even with, say, the gray area of marketing emails, right? For some stuff that I might have signed up for. You know, if I bought something from someone recently online, then for me, it's not beyond the pale to go, okay, they're going to shoot me a coupon for Similac, right? I'm going to keep going with the dad jokes. I've had them ready for years, so I'm going right to that well. But if it's completely something that I didn't look up, right? Because that's another weird piece of the surveillance apparatus there that we all, you know, necessarily have to engage in just by being on the internet. If it's not something I've looked up, if it's not something I've engaged with, if it's not from someone that I have, you know, some sort of relationship with, that this is something it's not out of the realm of possibility. That is then okay. It kind of passes my first 5 check, but if it doesn't, my spidey sense is tingling like crazy right from the jump.
So you're looking at it. It's coming to your inbox. You're can see the sender name.
Sure.
Not necessarily going to see their email. That doesn't always pop up.
Exactly.
You see the sender name. Is that familiar?
Yep.
Next thing I'm looking at the subject line.
Oh, yeah.
Preview of the subject line. Is that something, again, that I'm expecting to be receiving? Is it something very mundane? Mm-hmm. I think the mundanity of email, or the mundanity of an email subject, can sometimes point to its legitimacy or not. Something very, very boring that doesn't, hit the spidey senses, doesn't cause any sort of sense of panic. I think more often than not, it's going to be relatively legitimate.
Sure.
Allbirds sending me a 15% off sale. I'm like, okay, well, it's 15% off, but it's not the most exciting thing in the world.
Okay. It's not free shoes.
It's not 70-80% fire sale.
Exactly.
For example.
Yeah.
But something telling me that my account has been compromised, my Netflix account has been compromised, that I need to change my password immediately. That's instilling in me a sense of fear, a sense of doubt, trepidation. And that's the number one thing that I've ever heard, and that I will tell to anybody else. The moment that an unsolicited or unsuspected electronic communication instills in you a negative emotion, a visceral negative emotion, that's when you need to start looking for everything else that's wrong with it.
100%. That's spot on, because I think that gets around the mechanical advances in those dark arts which are coming as a result of AI, right? We could jump into that a little bit down the road, in the conversation, but I think that's still something that can't quite be circumvented, right? Because if you put a spin, if you take that nugget of wisdom, Robin, right, which I think is spot on. You can tell it's almost like you do this for a living, but right? But it's honestly, but but that negative emotion, right, you can't circumvent it via AI quite yet. Maybe not. Who knows? But it should at least start you down the path of really taking a harder look at other elements, right? So it's, and it could, and it's so universal, right? Like, say for example, I was just thinking, I'm getting my ducks in a row potentially, as new dad, maybe getting a dad mobile, right? So then I'm taking a little bit harder look at my credit score, right? Trying to dot the I's, cross the T's. If I were to get something from like a Credit Karma that says, your score just fell off a table, open immediately, we have to stop it. Again, that could be one of those things, right? Where maybe it passes that first test of course I'm engaging with this service online.
Yeah.
Right. To kind of do something that I needed to do, but it's something that itself could have been circumvented for nefarious purposes, right? With that weird feeling.
Yeah, and this is a good point. I mean, we'll go in a minute into things like motivations and whatnot, because that's an important point. Know thy enemy. It's easier to figure out what you shouldn't interact with when you can know when you do know what the person on the other end of the communication is actually after. But yeah, that the negative emotion piece there is really key, and it's a trigger, like you said. It's a trigger to go looking for other stuff that doesn't quite look right. For anybody who's familiar with Daniel Kahneman, a behavioral psychologist, his book Thinking Fast and Slow, I have to admit, never actually read it, but I know some of the key learnings out of it. System one and System 2 thinking.
Yeah.
Phishing is about getting you to act without thinking about what it is that you're doing, without thinking about the potential consequences, just to get you on autopilot, so that, and here's the motivation piece, so that somebody can grab your username and password for a particular service that you use, so they can get your credit card details, so that they can get personal information about you that they may be able to use for a further attack later down the line. You mentioned credit scores. They might be using it for fraud purposes. They want your name, your date of birth, your address, last 4 digits of your social if you're in the US. Now, whenever you get a negative emotion, having received an unsolicited or unexpected email, is go look for other stuff that's wrong. Try and figure out why exactly how else exactly is this not on level. So, good segue then into the next piece of, you open the email, right? Because actually these days, opening the email, there was all this furore around, oh no, you can get the virus just from opening it. Maybe that was true. It doesn't really happen anymore. It's very, very rare that kind of thing happens in this day and age, because it's generally more valuable to get you to offer up the information yourself. So I've opened it up. I'm now looking at the sender line. I've got the sender display name, which is relatively easy to fake. It's not hard. I could create an Outlook account and just call myself Delta Support. Then Microsoft stuff might ping that as being suspicious, but it's not necessarily going to stop me doing it. But the email address is the more difficult thing to spoof there. So what kind of things are you looking for when you're looking at the actual email address that it's sent from?
Sometimes, and this could be not necessarily hard and fast rule, but like you said, right? Jumping on if it says it's from Delta, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's this wildly long email address.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Sometimes those are legit, though.
Those can be.
I get tokenized emails from Amazon, which hide the real email of the actual seller.
Or you have somebody rocking a MailChimp, account, trying to do chimp account and trying to do some sort of send, right? And maybe they didn't mask it, maybe they didn't use the alias or whatnot. But again, this is more. It's not necessarily like an if-then. I think this is more like points on a scale, right? Where it
Yeah.
fills a meter, and then your spurious alarm, right, should sound after, I don't know, 60 points out of 100 or whatnot, right? Whatever
Yeah.
quantification you wanna picture. But that I try to see if they match, right? If I'm expecting something from, for you said Allbirds, I'm an old man now, old dad, so Merrills, I guess, are more my speed here, right, for the bad
At
feet.
least it's not Doc Martens.
Oh, not no. Hey, listen, I gave up the punk phase in my life many moons ago, but it's I try to see, does it match, right? Or at least
Yeah.
put your thumb out in the air and go, is it at least somewhat? If I squint and look sideways a little bit, that this and that is the next right down the cascade of decision points.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing to look out for there as well, typo squatting.
Oh
Typo
yes.
squatting, the act of deliberate, misleading misspellings. Stuff that, I'm trying to think of the right way of phrasing this. Stuff that to the casual glance looks right,
or that you would naturally fat finger, right? There's a whole listing of typo squatting that's just like, oh, I naturally could hit an N or an M, right? Looking down on my keyboard. Oh, that makes sense, right? That sort of stuff.
But you get things like uppercase I's look like L's, things like that. There's a really really neat one that I've seen recently. Some Cyrillic character that looks like an A but isn't an A, and that can get used, and so that could end up being in what looks like a Gmail address, for example. So looking for those things, looking at anything that looks a little bit unusual in the email address. Next thing I'm looking at, I'm going the salutation.
Oh yes.
Because these people, a lot of the time, these people don't know who you are. They can't address you by name, or they won't address you by name because they can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dear user, dear madam, sir, hello.
Hello, friend. That one I saw recently.
Friend.
I'm like, I don't have too many of those, so that's a lie, right?
You had me at hello, friend.
Right? Because hey, I'd like one every now and again, but no, stop it. Don't be. Yeah, no, that's a sign.
And then here's now where, and there's a lot of advice that we used to be able to give that held relatively true, and it was normally around spelling, punctuation, grammar, formatting. If the email just looks very unprofessional for Netflix and is littered with typos, then you can be pretty sure that their marketing or promotions team, global team, whatever it is, didn't green light that particular email. Generative AI has made that really, really difficult because
it's changed the game.
Now a lot of spelling errors, lack of technical ability that some of these people have. I mean, bear in mind, right? If you're listening to it as an English here, right? So presumably you're all English speakers in the audience. Many of the people sending the fishes aren't native English speakers. They're using translation tools. They're doing things in the best that they can for their command of the language, and they're making mistakes. Generative AI is painting over all of those cracks because these natural language models or these large language models just don't make those mistakes, and these guys can run it through. Similarly with the formatting, right?
Oh yeah.
The
phrasing, idioms,
generate the formatting for you.
Absolutely, the formatting. Like you can now, even I've seen LLMs where you can localize it to a region, right? Say
Ooh.
I've seen it from
regional dialects.
Yeah, I've seen it from like a marketing standpoint, right? If you want to connect to a certain subsector of a market, right? You can change the prompt a little bit and try to really tailor it so it looks like it's which again, not nefarious purpose. Well, somewhat, right? It's a little bit of manipulative marketing. That's a gray area here. But in this context, right, for phishing messages, we can no longer rely on the old faithfuls, right? Of if this is littered with mistakes, as you said, if the punctuation's bad, if the phrasing's just janky, if it feels weird, if it's too formal for the type of greeting, right? Things don't match up. Like you said, that's all spackled over. at this stage, and you can no longer totally rely on those tells, right, to add to that meter of weirdness.
Yeah. Some of the stuff you can rely on though. So outside of that, because again, still look for your spelling, punctuation, grammar. Still look for your formatting, because there are still people out there who are just generating crap emails. That realistically, if you know what you're looking for, they're relatively easy to spot.
Sure.
I think for me, then, there's only really two or three final things that I'm looking for there. Number one is threatening sort of tone or the authorities ones. We are from the IRS and you've not paid taxes and you have to pay fines in gift cards. The authorities never ask you for fines in gift cards. I'll just bring that out there.
That's still something you can bank on, thankfully, right? If that ever changes, I think we're in for a bad time.
Well, there's an effective money laundering,
of course,
method.
Sure.
And it converts electronic into basically converts into cash relatively quickly. I mean, these guys will pay. These guys will take 70 cents on the dollar for the gift card value just for the laundering of it.
Sure.
So threatening tones or
the old webcam scams. Those are
the sextortion. Well, we talked about that in the previous. We didn't go too deep into it.
No.
But yeah, the sextortion piece. Again, anything that's generally threatening, and you'll these sorts of things, you'll know it's a phish relatively quickly, because I mean, particularly for the sextortion, they won't dance around the point. They'll say, "I am trying to extort you." That's not in so many words, but it'll be pretty clear. The other two things, then, and I think kind of related here, the links or the attachments. And I don't entirely get why the attachment piece is still so. Actually, no, I do. I know I do, because it works. I was going to say I don't get why the attachment piece is still so rife, because lots of phishers cyber attackers aren't really looking at delivering malicious software, malware in emails anymore. That stuff's relatively easy for the security tools to spot, and it gets filtered out. But what they are quite keen on doing is sending you attachments that may lead you out of band. They might, and I say out of band, I'm talking about get you on the phone to a call center somewhere where they can put more pressure on you, because you're there in a live conversation and you're being pressured not to think about what is going on. The other bit then being links as well. So phishers will try and get you to click on links to places where they can skim information from you. My favorite one at the moment is, as far as where links end up going, is Office 365 sign-in pages.
Oh, goodness.
It's literally the most cloned login page in the world, because so many businesses use Office 365. And people are just very, very used to seeing Microsoft delivery, logo, layout of the login screen, and going, username, password. It doesn't go anywhere. The screen just refreshes. Something goes wrong. It might redirect you to a legitimate one. You think, that's very odd. It didn't log in, but I'll just try again. In actual fact, somebody's just got to stolen your password.
It's one of those where the advice that we give still holds, which is go to your point, go out of band, go to the site yourself, right? If it's still something that you want to run down and potentially you're undecided, you don't know if you're being too cautious or if you're being scammed, then go and check. What not much I can say with this preamble, but one of the things I do love about financial institutions is that a lot of times, right, they'll say, we're never going to ask you for your sign-in information via any sort of messaging that we send to you. And they even offload a lot of their messaging into, we've sent you a secure message, but it's housed within, right, their infrastructure and their portal. They don't even send you the information anymore, right? They just go log in the way you normally would, and then, check our messaging center there. because they've, of course, right, are one of the places that are rife with scamming, right? Because why mess with the banks? Because that's where the money is. So it's that's one piece I like, and it's also something that still holds true. If you want to check it out on your own, right? Open up a browser window independently, check, and then see if something checks out. But like links directly, when we face this, right, in our 9 to 5s and also just in side projects, we can educate folks, and then we'll send links to them, and they go, wait a second, is this legit or not? Which means the education's working, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I'm very hesitant just to click links, period, inside of emails.
Yeah. The links can be hidden though. I mean, and that's
true too.
That's potentially a problem. Like, what are you looking for with a hidden link?
What it's really, I think, and this is going back to some of the advice that you've been that I've been privileged enough to see you offer, right, on webinars and whatnot. The hover over.
Yes.
Right, like but again, this whole setup is built for you to do, like you said, right? The system one thinking where you're just plowing through. You're not taking a second to go, let me look at this analytically, right? Where in hindsight, if you do get caught up, you go, wow, I was silly, and I bypassed like 3 checks. But the hover over is taking that extra second, and it's one of those things where you take that extra second, right? The whole scam is set up so that you don't, right? So it just like you said, it gets you on the phone or gets you out of bed. It just rushes your decision-making process to bypass any of those natural checks and balances. But one of the things that I love, right, is taking extra time and playing around with hover over, whether it's from the top of the investigation, you look at where something's going, where something's come from, or right, you hover over the body of the email and you try to suss out, wait a second, right? And then you look, right? Depending on the operating system, it'll show the bottom corner, on the left, on the right, whatnot. But you look at where something is purportedly sending you, and this is not, again, it's not a fail-safe, right? But it's adding to, does this seem more legitimate? Does it seem less legitimate? And you take a look at, okay, where does this want to put me? Right.
Yeah. You mentioned something really, really good there about tracking back through to earlier in the email as well. I think that piece around corroboration makes an awful lot of sense. Does the whole email line up with each other, or have we got an email from Delta, for example, that is trying to send you to somewhere that is a Microsoft login, for example, right? You expect Delta to send you to Delta. So, does that track? Do those things match? Does it add up? Similarly, again, the Delta display name might be there, for example, but it might be saying it's Delta support at random email domain
or some S3 bucket name, right? That like again, it could and it could be some janky, the IT infrastructure at Delta. Who knows, right? Maybe they didn't mask it the right way to make it nice and brandable, of course, or it could be that it's not Delta, right? There's one of those,
yeah, exactly. So that I think that then brings us on to because we're talking about we finished up there on what kinds of things are we looking at? What kind of things are we looking for? And we're talking about links. And the links are trying to get something out of you. Right? Which I think brings us neatly onto motivation. Where are the motivations? I mean, for anybody there's plenty of different motivations for state-sponsored hackers and that sort of stuff. We're not necessarily talking about those guys here. Those who get they can get very targeted. But for your average person who's just being hit with scams, like what's the motivation there?
Money. Straight money, right? Or getting access to your money eventually, or getting, like you said, getting access to information that's going to lead to money, right? Whether directly or potentially indirectly. Might not necessarily be I'm handing over the keys to my bank logins, right? But maybe I'm setting up a situation where I'm giving enough of my personal information and suddenly there's 7 credit cards open up in my name, right?
Oh,
It's
what, like me? Well, oh, no, the other bit thing I was going to go to was like, oh, what do you mean, like Facebook quizzes about what animal are you?
oh goodness gracious. And listen, friends and loved ones, right? I think have gotten sick of me rolling my eyes when they're taking these, and I'm just like, what? Why? Who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah.
Right? You know what sort of animal I am? The one that doesn't give a shit. Like, stop. Like, why are you doing this? You know, there's that. There was the aging app. Remember that thing? Right, where
Oh, was that the AI one?
it was like facial recognition. Yeah, and then it was just aging you or
Yeah.
doing a face swap. Right? Like, you know, I ended up. You know, there
Throw
was.
your face into a Russian data,
Oh
into a
God.
facial.
Yeah, and it's like what, like to what end? Right? Like, you know. So I think you know, straight up money, access to information. Right, as you said, that there's targeted avenues, right, for spear fishing if we want to get, you know, really crazy, or whaling,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff there. But yeah, money is the first one that comes to mind for me.
It's pretty much always, when it's the scams, it's pretty much always the money.
It's
I mean, the
always,
money, the information, because
yeah.
this is the other big piece as well. Many of these scams can be multi-stage, you know, things. There are the other side of it. Not everything not everything's a scam right at the right at the point of contact. Some people are actually some fishers. They're trying to harvest credentials from you, logins, username, password. They already got your email address, but the username, password piece, so they can just go and then sell them elsewhere on the dark web.
Yep.
There's big business in that. But yeah, I think the main one here is money. And this is actually backed up by our Bible of cybersecurity statistics, the Verizon data breach investigations report.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this now, they've got, for 2023, 74% of data breaches of large companies involving the human element, which means some person has taken some manner of action somewhere that has led to the cataclysm of exposed data. Some of that action may be deliberate. The vast majority of it's probably going to be accidental. 49% of the breaches involved credentials, involved stolen credentials, which is wild. Like that's half of them where they're saying we've stolen your login details because that's how we're going to get in. As far as motives go, 89% of that has been financial. 89%.
It's money, right? Why rob banks again?
All the money.
It's just all cash.
There's an interesting one that we're going to go into in a few weeks' time. I'm very keen. I quite like it. It's a very interesting little case study. It's to do with Myanmar.
Mm-hmm.
It's to do with the political instability over there. For those of you who've kept an ear to the ground on that, the military junta doesn't have a particularly strong grip on the nation, particularly not in the northeast in Shan State, where lots of rebels have an awful lot of power and control over the territory, and they've been harboring Chinese scam outfits. It's a really interesting one. I would like to go into it in a few weeks, so keep your ears peeled for that. But ultimately, yeah, scam farms, and some of these scams are set up in an industrial
Business.
level.
It's a big business,
right?
in a lot of cases, right? It's you go and it's you got your dentist, right? You got your rug dealers, right? You got your maybe a Kroger, right, in the strip mall, and then right next to all this, you have a scam farm. It's
big old call center.
Right. That's sadly in a lot of places. That's what you see.
Yeah. Yep. All targeting gullible customers. Shame. I can see why it happens, though. I mean, go for the people who aren't paying attention and some of the money to spare.
Or catch them on a bad day, right? Like that's, I think, one of the points that we're driving home. It's not necessarily, you can be completely vigilant, but there's people inside of our industry, right, Robin, that they get got too. Like this, it's just so prevalent because it's still so effective, right? And it's also, as with many things in cyber, it's a constant arms race, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to finish this segment on. We'll likely do more on. We're always going to be doing stuff on scams. We'll likely come back to the topic of phishing on a pretty on a somewhat semi-regular basis at least. But I do want to finish with as well. This isn't the sole preserve of email, of text, of the phone scams, because there is an entire other platform that we've not even mentioned right now where all of this goes on. And until the behemoths that manage the platforms do anything meaningful to address it, the likes of Facebook, Meta, or so the likes of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the like, are breeding grounds for this stuff. And a lot of, particularly the crypto scams, come through on these platforms. So be wary of anyone reaching out to you unsolicited, offering attractive returns on your money.
It's a nice way of saying get rich quick scheme. I like the classy way, right? The attractive returns.
It always is. It's always get rich quick.
Come on, man.
Get rich quick schemes don't exist. It's get poor quick.
If it was that easy, everyone would do it, right? Goodness.
Precisely. Okay, Vault Typhoon. Tell us about that.
Oh goodness!
I actually know relatively little about this, so this will be enlightening for me.
So speaking of state-sponsored actors, right? And this is in the news, and it's weird because it was in the news recently, but it's going back 5 years, right? That this activity has been tracked.
This.
Yes. See,
I have heard of this.
Of course you have, man. Like you're sitting here, playing the the voice of the listener here, but like you absolutely have heard this. We've for sure talked about it. It's sad, it's scary, and I think it's for my money. Although I'll say this, and then there's a recent piece in the news of the new nuclear war is the new nuclear war, right? With the satellite, capability, that wild business. But up until that little tidbit was dropped this week, in my opinion, really this mutually assured destruction, just took a new turn, a new angle. Right back when it was the U.S. and the USSR, it was that old standoff. There was nukes pointed everywhere, and it was just like if you kicked it off, it would just blow everyone to kingdom come. Now it's sadly we're doing the same thing in the cyber realm. Right, and going back to Vault Typhoon, it's a state-sponsored group that's I don't know what's the politically correct way to say associated with China or, it is a Chinese state-sponsored group. But there's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Based on the things that far more technical folks than you or I have done a bit of the attribution there, but so. They're everywhere, right there, and what's scary is they're on critical infrastructure, right? And that's what's the most terrifying piece, right? I think this came across my radar at first, where the state-sponsored actor was responding to the United States building out more capabilities in Guam, right, from a military perspective. So there's the whole issue with Taiwan and China, will they, won't they, and the U.S. being really the only bulwark against China just saying that's mine, in a much more direct fashion than it did with Hong Kong, right? But I think to the same end, sadly, eventually. But so the U.S. built out military capability in Guam, and then next thing you know, it was discovered that this Chinese state-sponsored group was lurking, right, on those that infrastructure, right, the cyber infrastructure on those new military facilities, just in case, right? It was as my old friends in the my old rep friends here would say, they keep that thing on them, right? It's just so you know, I just have it here. We're not going to do anything, but, should you get crazy, I'm just going to put this gun on the table, right? And essentially, I think the rabbit hole was pursued, the thread was unraveled, whatever analogy you want to use. Bob's your uncle. They're on critical infrastructure in the United States mainland, right? I always try to be balanced when I talk about this, saying that we're also on theirs, right? Same as we're on Russia's on ours, right? It's a whole
everybody's on
everybody's on everybody's. However, that's not to take away how on its face how scary it is, right? Especially when the thing that always comes to mind for me is the issue with the Colonial Pipeline. Right, that was like a whoopsie daisy, according to the group. Right, they tried to say, "Hey, sorry, our bad. We didn't know that we were on a pipelines network. We thought this was just a bunch of smart blenders that we were going to take down for the lulz." I don't know what they were trying to say, but the FBI wasn't having it, and there was repercussions there. But the point being, right, with that little tangent is, being on a pipeline, right, from a cyber perspective with operational technology and IoT and whatnot. It shot up heating prices, right? It put some strain on that supply chain, which is terrifying, right? What happens in the winter?
Yeah.
So to say, it's no small thing that a state-sponsored actor is lurking on critical infrastructure. What is exactly meant by that, Robin? Right? It's our water supplies, right? It's the sewage treatment. It's electricity. It's gas. Right, it's our power infrastructure. I think technically speaking, also hospitals, right, fall under that purview. It's those things that keep the underpinnings of civilized society working, right? And when you start unraveling those, then you start going into, we're trading bottle caps for currency, right? But it's so Vault Typhoon, right? A good Fallout reference, but Vault Typhoon, right, is this, and it's a very sophisticated actor. Right, which again goes part and parcel with the fact that it's state sponsored. Right, it's essentially an extension of the military capability for the Communist Party of China, and it's doing so. Right, another kind of nugget or tidbit for this, it's doing so with the old standard of just compromising unpatched machinery, unpatched hardware that's out there on the internet. Right, like old firewalls, old routers, old VPNs. It's able to sidestep and leverage, right, laterally move from those easily ownable pieces of tech, right? Because cyber hygiene is garbage. Exactly.
Yeah, technology that's not been updated
100%.
and secured.
Absolutely.
Because someone's forgotten about it.
Right? It's probably the same, we can draw corollaries back to, again, I'm going out on a limb here, so don't quote me, I guess, but maybe, why not? Maybe similar things to what happened in PA, as you were mentioning, right? It's just some old tech that's out there that folks just forgot about, didn't want to put the $2, right, to do $10 worth of prevention, that old chestnut. And through that, right, with enough sophistication, which this group absolutely positively has, right, they're on the tip of the spear. You mentioned DPRK, right, the North Koreans, Iranians, the Russians, Chinese are definitely up there in terms of cyber capabilities. They're there and they're on our critical infrastructure just to let us know to stay worried, don't get involved. Maybe if push comes to shove in what happens in Taiwan, or who knows, in many other theaters, right? So that, in a nutshell, for me, is what comes to mind with Vault Typhoon.
There's a tricky one here, because this is very easy to get very politicized very quickly, and dare I say, pointing too many fingers too swiftly, too many times at certain folks potentially breeds screams of xenophobia,
of course,
racism, etc., etc. So because the problem that we've got here as well is that this is going to sound all very doom and gloom, and oh God, what can we do about it? What can individuals do to make them feel as though they've done all they can?
Patch your stuff, right? 100%. First and foremost, it's a hygiene for a reason, right? It's not sexy, but go 2 weeks without brushing your teeth, right? You're going to smell funky. Same thing
Ugh.
with with your cyber hardware, your cyber software, right? Don't ignore when the pop up comes up and says, "Hey, we're going to need to listen." You know what? Click that. Refresh your Google browser, right? Please refresh. Patch your hardware. If something comes in for your router, right?
Yeah.
Or something that's keeping you connected to the internet, patch that too. Like it's simple. It's not overly crazy. It's not totally convenient either, right? I think I could make the argument where, as technologists or like as an industry as a whole, we could take steps to make it a hair more user friendly to do this. But that's really at the heart of it, right? That's really all it takes. And everyday folks can do that tomorrow, today, tonight, right?
Yeah, for sure. From the critical infrastructure point, though, because that's all your own.
Sure.
That's all your own stuff. What about that critical infrastructure?
I think angle? To your point earlier, right? And you sly devil, I think you were doing this purposely from a segue perspective.
I know nothing.
Hey, listen, you stop it right now, right? Nobody's believing. It's only 2 episodes in, but nobody's believing that, Robin. You're a ringer if there ever was one. However, it's a matter of, right? Make it a point, make it an issue for the folks that are in charge, right? That this is something that you want to have in the political conversation, right? Regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, I think having, your local water system be owned, right? Or pwned by Russia, China, Iran, or anybody outside of the municipality that should really be owning and operating that thing, I think is a completely, it's an apolitical issue that everyone can agree on.
We are in the cyber industry, we are in an incredibly rare, fortunate position in this day and age to be operating in possibly the most bipartisan area of conversation, because it doesn't, like you said, regardless of what side of the aisle, everybody agrees that this is a big issue.
Period.
But apparently somehow we still have trouble getting traction on something.
Well, it's because it's going to be attached to dollars, right? And it's not necessarily, right? I haven't yet found, and if we do, I think, that's something that we trademark immediately, right? But I haven't found a sexy way to pose this as, a blockbuster issue that'll get folks to get behind it, right? Unfortunately, I hate that we're at this point in maturity with this industry where we can point to, hey, ransomware can kill people now, right? That's a threshold that I know when we were both young in the industry, we're like, it's coming, but damn it, when it does happen, that's going to be sad. It has happened, but
you sound like such a doom monger as well, saying,
of course,
it's like it's the same as the people who, and regardless of whatever you think about the climate, that there have been people saying, for the longest time, we're right at the precipice, we're right at the precipice, we're right at the precipice, and every year we're right at the precipice. Now, I've been witnessing enough weird weather events to think, there's something not quite right going on here, but have maybe some of these claims been slightly overblown in recent years?
Potentially. I mean, you're going to get those weird things where if it's going to be clickbaity, right?
Yeah.
But, I'm not exactly going to put a bunker on my property, right? But I think a little bit of disaster preparedness can go a long way, right? I think it's kind of in that same vein, right? Where it's not necessarily like I'm thinking I have to rent out a fallout shelter, right? Going back to that reference there. But it's still, I would rather be a hair more prepared than underprepared, right? I just love, my water supply locally to not be gettable from an entity that doesn't have, my municipality's best interests at heart, regardless, again, like you said, apolitically. However, it's still difficult to run on that, right? I can think of maybe one or two, high profile politicians that run on, safety and security of data, right? And one of them's a homeboy from Colorado. Again, a lone voice in the wilderness. It's hard, I think, to sell it. Unfortunately, sadly, until something terrible does occur, and then you can go back.
Yeah, the problem I've always looked at cybersecurity is it's a form of insurance, and not a single person on this planet, unless they've got some interesting leanings, thinks that insurance is sexy.
Honestly, right? Like I keep thinking of the main character in Ozarks, right? Where that was his big thing. But even he said, right, that this is a terrible soul sucking job, and until it got fantastical with went Breaking Bad levels of dramatic, it wouldn't be fit for consumption on a media channel. But it's better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it. It's still a hard sell.
Yeah, I mean, well, you were saying there about, we talked about the climate sort of piece there for a second. I'm not for a minute also suggesting that I am any sort of a climate change and I think there's something wrong. And people probably come at me for that. But
hey, I'm right there with you. I'd like to say on the record, I'm right there with you, please.
Downtown Manhattan's not going to flood tomorrow, but I have seen it flood, and I'd much rather there be permanent flood defences in New York Harbour than see that part of the world go underwater.
I'd like to be able to go to Venice someday, right, and not have it be like, Venice was here, right, and just have it be like a buoy, next to a spire.
I mean, some people, some people there's lots of people who don't have particularly nice things to say about Ocean Drive down on Miami Beach, but I quite like Miami Beach. I would prefer not for that not to be underwater.
Absolutely.
But the other bit that you said there, that the reference that you made with regards to Ozark, it always makes me. I had the epiphany the other day. Jason Bateman in Ozark and Jason Bateman in Arrested Development. I realise he's basically playing the same character but in drastically different circumstances.
100%.
And one of them's incredibly serious and the other one's incredibly funny.
Same guy.
But he's not changed.
No. He's got a lane. He does it well, right? And he's out there printing cash. So mazel tov to him, right? Like that.
For sure. Right. Moving on. Final piece. We said last week that we're going to have certification corner. It might have to be a short one here because we are grossly over on time. This will be, even for what we're going to have to cut out for internet issues and all that sort of stuff, we're still probably running a bit long. I think we're going to come in at the hour 15 sort of mark with this. Cert corner. CISSP, Certified Information Security Systems Practitioner, is it?
I believe so. All right. Okay. Your guess is as good as mine.
It's the one that gets talked about a lot. I think it's the one that lots of people will think, oh, I should go get that. What is it? Who's it for?
It's really, I think, it's aimed at, folks that are trying to break in, I think, to the managerial end, right, of information security. And right there, I think, should be the pause of, wait a second, right? I'm not going to break in to an industry and start running stuff or start managing anything, right? There's going to take some time. You want that time, right? It's, again, one of my many, many points at which I'm going to break into, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu references, right? If you can wait to get them belts, right? Like after a certain point in time, it's a good thing, right? You want to get your feet under you. You want to get the mastery there before, people start to expect you to work at a certain level. Right, kind of similar sort of thing here. Unfortunately, right, I do get the converse to those points where you want to break in, and this is something that's listed on almost every HR job spec when it comes to InfoSec imaginable. I don't want to have the ISC squared mafia come after me. I don't think it's necessarily a bad cert, right? But I think it's absolutely overused from a hiring manager perspective as a barometer for anything beyond like 2 to 3 years, which of experience in cyber, which is puzzling to me because it necessitates the 5. Right, exactly. You can get the waiver for education. You can get, I think fairly that's it. And you can, sadly, completely transparent, you can sidestep it with another CISP, like signing off on stuff, which is, unless you have the juice and the time, it's something I completely and utterly say is a terrible thing to do. So you're going to shortchange yourself, right? But it's there to denote, I think, mid getting to senior level practitioner in cyber. It's very broad, right? It's the classic. Yeah. The classic thing is, it's a mile wide and an inch deep, because it's meant to prepare you, I believe, to manage in cybersecurity, and with what all that can mean, right? You can manage a SOC, you can manage a threat and vulnerability management capability, you can manage governance, you can just manage, right? It's the catch-all. That's what it's meant to be, right? This is kind of table stakes for getting to that level. So what it's not, right, is something that I think entry-level folks that are looking to break in to the industry should be keeping their eyes on, at least at first, right? The old standard that I go back to is your Sec Plus, right, from CompTIA, the Security Plus, I think is something to kind of take a look at if you're trying to break in. There's a few things. I think ISC Squared itself, right, is doing certified in cyber. It's trying to kind of come into CompTIA's lane, and then CompTIA is trying to do the CASP, right, which is, they're so they're trying to, in a weird yin yang type circular, exactly, and and offer, and listen, and this is me, right? I think we're doing Cert Corner, and I'm taking the reins there because I love getting these. So there's a time and place, I think, for all of these, right? But the Sec Plus, while it might not necessarily, get you that job, maybe 10 years ago it might have, right? I won't lie there. I think now, it's at least for any mentees that I have, I target the Sec Plus and go, it should give you an idea of what you want to get into, right? Maybe it'll give you an idea of what tickles your curiosity bone, what gives you an itch that you have to scratch. Go that route. It's not going to be the golden ticket, right? The Willy Wonka into the industry that maybe it used to be. But absolutely, right? When folks try to tell me, okay, I'm going to get the Sec Plus, and then next thing you know, I'm going to go get the CISP. I'm like, how? Right? Because you're not going to have the 5 years that are necessitated for it. And honestly, truly, what I'm starting to get into the mode of now, right? This is me personally, right? 10 years into cyber. It's a different feel, and it's a lovelier feel when you're taking certs that, yes, it's like the Goldilocks effect. It stretches you a little bit, right? But it's a validation of what you know, right? And what you're doing. It's a whole different, I'm personally, I'm studying for the PGMP, the Program Management Professional from PMI, right? Yeah. Been a program manager for 2.5, 3 years now, roughly thereabouts. Different thing. It's adding to my tool set, but I'm not going, oh Lord, this is not, I don't know anything about this, but I'm just memorizing, right? I'm truly understanding. I'm getting concepts, which is, I think, if you try to bust into the CISP right from the jump, I'm not saying that you can't get it, right? There's brilliant folks that are trying to break in, and we need all of you in the industry, quite frankly. So please don't get discouraged. But you're just going to memorize, right? Again, I'm going to make another rap reference, right? I'm out here rapping, you're straight memorizing, right? There's a difference in terms of like your understanding of the field, I think, and you're shortchanging yourself, right? Because hey, you'll get the CISP maybe by hook or by crook, right? Let's say you do. You go march into the hiring manager's office, they're going to expect a level of proficiency and a level of experience more so, right? It's that experience piece, not even necessarily the proficiency, because again, there's brilliant folks out there. We need everyone. So you might be able to even put that up front. But the experience pieces that they're going to expect you to have, right? When you march in, eventually you're going to get found out, and that's a terrible, terrible feeling. And I don't want you to then get dissuaded from joining the industry because you went the wrong route. Yeah.
Okay, so that is Cert Corner, our first Cert Corner. So we'll recap that as, so CISP, It's definitely not for the beginners.
No. No.
My understanding as well is sometimes that can be a little bit pricey to get as well.
Oh, I think now it's like $600-700, I think, just for the voucher, which is, and because, like you said, this is a great point here, because it's aimed at the more advanced practitioner, the books and the courses and the prep materials are going to be a hair more premium price than you'll see for the certified in cyber or for the Google cybersecurity certification or the Sec Plus, right? It's because it's one of those things. Heck, I think the ISC Squared offered the certified in cyber free, right? They did that whole where want to certify 1 million folks to break in.
Oh, I remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not going to do that with their flagship vehicle, right? Which is, again, meant to be a validation of 5 years in the game, where you have a certain level. Again, I don't want to say proficiency because we've both seen, Robin, right? Brilliant folks. It's the experience that I think it's a badge of validation for, that you're just not going to be able to have if you try to circumvent that 5-year period.
Yeah. So, not for the beginners, definitely for the practitioners that have been in the game for a little while. A little bit on the pricier edge. Need that 5 years experience. I mean, you can do the exam ahead of time, but you're not going to have the certification until you've done the 5 years, or at least got the sign-offs. Very, very broad. Does have a fair technical spin to it, but it's simply not for the newbies.
No.
Your recommendation, by contrast, Sec Plus, Security Plus from CompTIA, might have got you much more of a chance for a job straight out the gate 10 years ago. Not so much anymore.
No, I think
everyone and their dog has got it.
Yeah,
right.
And honestly, like, even I think now, like, the so-called trifecta, right, which is the A plus, the Sec Plus, and the Net Plus, all from CompTIA. That combo, right? Might be something that gets you further along the job path, I think, now. But again, that's then 3 certs, which even if they're all reasonably priced, that's times 3, and the prep time and the materials and all that, right? So it's not, I have yet to see that cert that's out there where I can go, and I would love to find it, right? Because I mentor folks. I'd love to be able to go, here, listen, take this and you're good, right? There's just, and anything that's posed that way, or anyone, right? And this gets me really angry. Anyone who goes, hey, if I teach you how to take this cert, you'll get a job. All those snake oil salespeople that just make my hair curl even more, right? Like, it's ridiculous. And so those are charlatans of the foulest caliber. And there is no silver bullet that a cert can get you into a job there.
And this is why we're doing Cert Corner, because it's to ensure you know what it is that you're looking for, what it is that you want to study up on and attain, and what kind of field you can expect to work in off the back of it. Not a single one of these certs is a guarantee of a job, because exactly that point about you're going to need to be able to back it up with demonstrable experience. Does end up slightly like that meme then of can't get a job because you don't have experience, can't get experience because you don't have a job.
Of course.
Vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
And at some point, you kind of just have to hope that you're going to get a break and a chance. Or, for those of you who are more technically inclined, you do your own, get your own stuff. Yeah, set up your own little labs, do some of your own cyber projects, and use that as a portfolio of stuff that you can evidence your ability.
Or volunteer, right? That's it. That for me, like the thing that I'm going with folks now. There's local organizations that might not necessarily have the coin, as we mentioned, how even municipalities, right, are sometimes pulling out their pockets there for cyber resources, right? Maybe there's
charities, nonprofits.
Of course, right? Go there, cut your teeth, be frank about your level of expertise, right? Don't go there and say, listen, I'm a cyber expert, and then you did the Boys and Girls Club dirty, right? It's the first one, or the YMCA, or what have you, right? Please Don't do that. But I'm positive that you can find folks that are in need, right, of those types of services at the level that you're at, and then you can cut your teeth there, and that experience, right, is going to be invaluable, because then that's the stuff you're going to speak to during an interview, right? It's going to be, oh yeah, I remember XYZ, or oh, I was trying this, or I was trying that. You and I have both been on both sides of the hiring desk, right? And we can smell when they're making something up, right? Or they actually were in the trenches doing XYZ, and they have some anecdotal weird story, as a lot of tech implementations can go, right?
Absolutely. Right, on that bombshell, we shall leave it here today. So, what have we done? We've done the news, we've done phishing, we went through Vault Typhoon, very interesting little case study there, and we finished up with Cert Corner, Sec Plus for you beginners, not CIS. Right. That's it for another week. No idea what we are going to have next time, so we shall see. But in the meantime, have a wonderful week or two, because again, we don't necessarily know when we'll be back either. It's all about schedules. But with that, we'll let you go and have a wonderful time.
Happy President's Day, everybody.
And happy President's Day. Well, a couple of days after the fact, because this won't go out until later in the week. But anyway, right, goodbye from me.
Take care.